Alright then, welcome to your ninth Python tutorial, and in this video we're going to take a look at for loops. So in Python, a for loop is used to repeat a specific block of code a known number of times. We might want to cycle through or loop through some kind of collection of data in your code. For example, you might have a list of users you want to cycle through, or a list of players you want to cycle through or loop through and do something with each of these players in that list, like attaching a property to it or just to print out to the console. So we use loops to perform this kind of behaviors. There are different kinds of loops, but in this video we're going to take a look at the for loops. So let's dive in and see the for loops in action in Python. So here I'm gonna create a list of players, and I'll store these players in a variable called players. So let's define this variable, and here I'm gonna create a list, and in this list we're gonna create the players, and we'll say Ken again, we'll say Dan, and here let's say Jane, and lastly let's say Dave. So here is a list of players. So let us see the way we cycle through each of these players and print it out to the console using a for loop. So the way we do this in Python is by saying, I'm going to write this now and explain it to you. So I'm going to say for players in, for player in players, I'm going to end it with the colon. So what this means is, it says for player in players. This player actually signifies each individual player in here. So each person here is a player. See, for each person in this list, it says for player in players. So we can use whatever thing we want to use. We can say for X in players or for A in players, but this here just signifies each individual in this list. So I use this player because it's just singular of players and it makes more sense. So we can say for X in players, meaning for each person in this list, I want you to do something. So what we want to do, we want to print it out to the console. So we're going to say print out the player. So for each player in this list, I want you to print out this player. And so now let's run this code. And here you can see it says Ken, Dan, Jane, and Dave. So it's printed out the individual person in this list. Now let's take a look at another example. I'm gonna just comment this out for now. And here let's take another example. I'm gonna basically do the same thing I did here, but I'm gonna explain. See, for player and players, I will say print the player. Now let's say we want to cycle through this list over here. I want to cycle through this list over here and just print a specific portion of this list, not printing out everybody in this list. So let's just say just a specific portion of this list. How do we do that? So you can remember when we slice lists in the previous videos, we use the square bracket notation. So we can also do that here. So the way we do this is by saying for player in players, then with the square bracket notation, we want to see the position we want to go from, and we say we want to start from the position 1 and up to the position 3, but not inclusive of the position 3. So if you understood the slicing of lists in the previous videos, you're gonna get what I'm saying. So we'll say from the position 1 up to the position 3. So it's gonna get the position 1 here is 0, 1, 2, and 3, but not inclusive of this day, which is the position 3. Now let's run this code. And here we get Dan and Jane. So it went all the way from 0, 1, 1, and this position 3, but not inclusive of this position 3, and we got Jane. So let's do another example right here. I'm just gonna do this. Now let's come down here. I'm gonna do same here. We'll say for player in players. So let's say while cycling through this list, wanna get a player who plays basketball. I wanna attach that basketball property to the player. I'm gonna say this player plays basketball or is a basketball player. So how do we do that? So the way we do this is by saying, let's just go down here and say for player in players. I'm gonna do a basic if statement here. So we learned about if statements in the previous video. I'm gonna say if the player is equal to, remember is a double equal to. So if the player is equal to, let's say Jane, and I want to do something. So if that player is equal to Jane, while cycling through, if you get this player named Jane, I want you to do something. So what do we want to do? We want to print something out to the console. And here we're gonna do a string formatting. And inside the string format, we're gonna do this curly braces, and we're gonna print out that player. And we're gonna just do something like this and say basketball player. So it says for player in players, if the player is equal to Jane, I want you to print out the player and say is the basketball players. So what if this condition wasn't true? What we're gonna do? So if the player is not Jane, else. So if the player is not Jane, else just print out the player. I'll print this out to the console. Now let's run this code again. Now let's come down here. Let me just clear the screen, and it says Ken, Dan, Jane, basketball player, and then Dave. So we use the basic if statement to get the player who plays basketball and the list. So there's something else I want to show you, and let's say at points in time in your code you want to break out of that loop by cycling through after you meet a specific requirement. Let's say after getting the player who plays the basketball, you just want to break out of that loop and neglect every other thing coming after it. Here we're going to use the break keyword to do that. So all we're going to do is if the player is equal to Jane, I want to break out of this loop. I'm going to just say break out of this loop. We're going to just specify the break keyword. Now let's run this code again. And here we got Ken, Dan, and Jane, and we broke out of the loop. So we've neglected the Dave. So it broke out of that loop and not printing out Dave to the console. So then this is a basic for loop in Python. Go around and play on with it, and you're gonna get used to it. And the next video we're gonna talk about while loops.